I never thought that one summer would turn everything upside down between us. He wasn't my dad, just the man who married my mom 2 years ago. Tall, quiet, with those huge hands that always seemed to know exactly what to do. Until one day he caught me in my room right in the middle of, well, you know what? And instead of leaving, he decided to join in and give me a lesson I'll never forget. But I'd better tell it from the very beginning, because it's just priceless. If you like my stories, don't forget to hit like and write in the comments, "Daddy, it costs you nothing." It was a suffocating Thursday at the end of May. The air in our little 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Buffalo was thick and humid, promising a storm any minute. Mom, as usual, was at her station in the Fashion Corner atelier downtown, where she spent whole days working magic on wedding dresses and school uniforms. And Victor, my stepdad, I thought had gone to his workout at the Titan gym across the river. Or so I thought. I was lying on my bed, curtains half drawn, throwing stripes of light and shadow across the wall. The room smelled of vanilla air freshener, and the slightly sour scent of my favorite old jeans tossed on the chair. I was enjoying that secret pleasure everyone knows about, but nobody says out loud. Some old Hands Up track was playing in my earbuds, and with my eyes half closed, I was fantasizing about Alex from the parallel class, the one with dimples and eternally messy blonde hair. He'd just added me on socials, and every like he dropped under my pics sent a whole storm through me. The pleasant rustle of sheets, rhythmic movements, thoughts racing in the same tempo as my hands. My mind was sinking deeper into that sweet haze, and then a floorboard creaked in the hallway and ripped me out of my dreams. My heart jumped into my throat. I yanked the blanket over myself, trying to hide, but it was too late. The door was slightly ajar, and there in the doorway stood Victor, perfectly still. He was watching me with those dark eyes that always made me feel so small and invisible. He was in his home clothes, an old but spotlessly clean, perfectly ironed athletic hoodie he wore around the house, and worn-out sweatpants tucked into socks. On his feet were the slippers he always wore at home. He looked like he'd just gotten back, even though I hadn't heard the front door. His stare was unreadable. No anger, no judgment, just studying silence. I instantly pulled the blanket up to my chin, trying to disappear from his gaze, but it was already too late. His eyes said everything. He'd seen way more than he should have, and I was dying of shame. "Sorry," I whispered, feeling the blush flood my cheeks all the way to my ears. He didn't say a word, just closed the door with a dull thud and left. Back then I thought he'd forget about it by the next day. But Victor never forgot anything, though over time, the feeling of being watched started to feel nicer. At first, I remembered that moment with horrible shame, but little by little it started seeming funny, even kinda hot. It began slowly. Looks that lasted longer than usual, accidental touches when he passed me the salt at dinner. He was always super neat with food, loved order, and even at home he looked put together. Those big, strong hands that could easily lift heavy stuff or fine-tune anything were something special to me. One day after showering, I found him waiting in the hallway right by my bedroom door, with an expression I couldn't tell was reproach or hunger or both. I was wearing my absolute favorite silk robe that Mom gave me for my birthday. It was soft pink with delicate lace trim along the hem and sleeves. I'd put it on over bare skin, and my damp skin felt every brush of the fabric. My hair was wet, droplets running down my neck and shoulders, leaving wet trails on the robe. I felt so vulnerable and at the same time so irresistible. Leaving wet footprints on the floor, I headed to my room, and he followed me with his eyes. My heart was pounding like crazy. I thought he'd take a step, but he walked past my door and didn't come in. It kept going like that until one evening when Mom went grocery shopping, and he sat down on the couch across from me in the living room. He was wearing a light gray t-shirt that slightly hugged his jacked torso and athletic sweatpants. He looked super relaxed, but his eyes were intense. He picked up the TV remote but never turned it on, just held it, stroking the buttons with his thumb. I sat holding my breath. I was wearing a blue, slightly tight but still modest dress with a small neckline that showed off my figure. The dress ended above the knee, and I felt his gaze slide over my bare legs. No stockings. Only my sneakers were off to the side. My bare feet and toes lightly touched the cool laminate. The air in the room turned thick, electric. And then he said the words that changed everything. "I think we need to talk about what happened. His voice was low, not angry, almost curious. "Have you ever felt something forbidden pulling you so hard you can barely breathe?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair from my face. His fingers lightly touched my cheek. It was so gentle and so unexpected that something exploded inside me. My hands started shaking. I couldn't say a word. He asked us to go to a more private place. My hands were shaking when I followed him into his office, the room he usually used for working with papers and reading. The room smelled of wood, old books, and that slightly sharp but very masculine aftershave he always wore. I remember once when I was little, I accidentally spilled it on myself, and the scent soaked into my skin so much that I could feel it all day. When he closed the door, I understood that nothing would ever be the same again. The click of the lock was loud and final. "You have nothing to be ashamed of," he said, stepping closer. "But there are better ways to do it." And then he showed me. He said in a soft voice, "I'll show you how it's done, doll." At first, it was only a theoretical lesson, then a practical one. His hands, so big and rough-looking, were surprisingly delicate when he wanted them to be. He taught me rhythms, pressure, little tricks that had never even crossed my mind. I was on the verge of exploding. I was his most diligent student. I repeated every movement to fix it in my memory, repeating them again and again so I wouldn't forget. That evening, we crossed a line we were never supposed to cross. It was intense. It was wild. It was unforgettable. "Slower," he whispered in my ear during one of our lessons. "Enjoy the journey." Soon our lessons became more intense. It was no longer just him teaching me, but me showing him how well I had learned the material. In every corner of the house, there was always a reason to repeat his lessons. Kitchen, living room, even the narrow hallway leading to my room. Everywhere we found an opportunity for our sessions, and always with that sharp, shivering fear that Mom would catch us. But that only made everything even more thrilling. These were our underground classes, as he called them. I remember how once he asked me to help him with repairs at the cabin that was outside Rochester. Mom was busy at work that day, preparing for a new dress collection show. The cabin was small, 2-story, with a view of the river. It was very quiet there. Nobody could disturb us. That day, I was wearing old but comfortable denim shorts that hugged my hips and a thin white tank top that became slightly see-through when I bent over. My hair was pulled into a messy bun. On my feet were old beat-up sneakers that should have been thrown out long ago. We started on the porch. He was teaching me how to hold a hammer properly, how to drive nails. His hands wrapped around mine, guiding every movement. I felt the warmth of his skin, the strength of his muscles. His scent, mix of wood, sweat, and that same aftershave, made my head spin. It felt like the air around us thickened, became heavy with tension. He leaned over me, explaining something, and I felt his breath on my neck. My cheeks were burning. When we went inside the house to get tools, he stopped in the doorway, blocking my way. Behind him, the light from the window fell straight onto me, outlining my silhouette. He just looked at me. His eyes were dark, almost black. "You're a very capable student," he whispered. His voice was low, velvety. I couldn't look away. It felt like he could see every thought, every secret desire. That evening, when the sun had almost set and the sky turned crimson orange, we sat on the old veranda. He told me stories from his youth, how he trained in the army, his first jobs. I listened, mesmerized by his voice, his movements. He was so strong, so confident. Those hands that had so skillfully driven nails now held a cup of tea. The same hands looked so powerful, capable of protecting and embracing. With him, I felt completely safe, and at the same time on the very edge of a cliff. He noticed my gaze, smiled. It wasn't the usual polite smile he gave Mom. It was different. Knowing. A little predatory. He leaned closer, took my hand, and stroked the back of it with his thumb. My heart skipped a beat. "You're beautiful," he said. His voice was barely audible. "Very beautiful." I felt goosebumps run across my skin. It wasn't a compliment. It was an acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that something existed between us, something alive and dangerous. Then there were evenings when Mom stayed late at work and we were left alone. He would put on old American movies she loved, but neither of us watched the screen. We sat on the couch, he in his favorite armchair, me on the floor leaning against a cushion. His gaze was always on me. I felt it even without looking. It was like an invisible thread connecting us. Sometimes he would drop something. A book, the remote. And when I bent to pick it up, his hand would accidentally brush mine. These accidental touches became a whole game, a little dance full of hidden meanings. One evening, when Mom went away for the weekend to her sister's in Albany, Victor suggested I look through his old photo albums with him. We were sitting in the living room on the big couch. I was wearing a loose cotton t-shirt and short shorts. My hair, usually in a ponytail, was down, and I could feel it brushing my shoulders. He was in his home shorts and tank top. We were flipping through the pages, laughing at his childhood photos, at his ridiculous hairstyles from his younger days. He showed me the place where he served in the army, his buddies. And then, on one page, I saw a photo of him in uniform. Young, strong, with a very serious expression on his face. I ran my finger over the picture. He noticed. "Like it?" he asked. His voice was quiet. I nodded. "Yeah, a lot." He closed the album, set it aside, then slowly turned to me, and that same look he had at the cabin appeared in his eyes. He reached out and very, very slowly ran his thumb along my cheekbone. My heart started pounding like crazy. I held my breath. I felt the whole world shrink to this room, this moment, this touch. He leaned in. His breath touched my lips. And then he said, "Now show me what I taught you." Our lessons now happened every single time Mom wasn't home. Kitchen, living room, my bedroom, any place could become the ground for our secret classes. I was learning not only the movements, but the art of secrecy. We whispered, moved silently like shadows. Our touches were quick and precise. The fear of being caught only heightened the thrill, making every second sharper and more desired. He was always careful, turned off the lights, listened to every rustle. One time it was Friday night. Mom had gone to a company retreat in Syracuse, leaving us alone for the whole weekend. Outside, a light rain was falling, and the city sank into cozy half-darkness. I was wearing his favorite dress, black, soft knit, bought on sale. It hugged my figure but looked completely ordinary, no extra details. The neckline was modest, yet wide enough to show my collarbones. With it, I wore thin pantyhose and low-heel shoes that Mom wouldn't have approved of because they were too grown up. I had my hair in a high ponytail so it wouldn't get in the way. I felt special, like I'd put on a costume for some important secret role. Victor was sitting in the armchair reading the newspaper. He was in his home shirt and pants, looked relaxed, but I could see the glint in his eyes. We were watching some old detective movie where the characters were constantly hiding things from each other. Against the screen where grim detective faces flickered, our shadows on the wall merged into one. I was sitting on the rug in front of the couch, casually. At some point, when the plot got intense, I reached for the remote that had fallen on the floor. My fingers brushed his hand. He didn't pull away. On the contrary, his palm covered mine firmly but gently. He pulled me to him. I sat on the edge of the couch next to him. Our thighs touched. He leaned in and whispered something in my ear about how important it is to feel the moment. His breath burned my skin, and a wave of goosebumps ran through me. Then we moved to the kitchen. Victor said he'd show me how to properly brew his favorite herbal tea, the one he brought back from trips to the Adirondacks. The kitchen was always bright and clean. He turned on the soft light over the stove, and our shadows danced on the walls. He took the herbs out of a clay jar. Their scent filled the air. Mint, chamomile, something else sharp and sweet. He asked me to help him reach the cups from the top shelf. When I stretched up, he stepped behind me. His body almost touched mine. His hand settled on my waist, helping me reach. I felt his fingers lightly squeeze the fabric of my dress. It was so simple, so innocent. Yet my body reacted to every single touch. He talked about the herbs, how each one affects the body, and I just nodded, barely listening. My thoughts were only on him, his closeness. His voice was low and calm, but I could feel the hidden power in it. When the tea was ready, he poured it into 2 cups. Steam rose from the tea, filling the kitchen with fragrant scent. He handed me a cup. Our fingers touched again. This time he ran his thumb over the back of my hand, then slowly wrapped his fingers around mine, as if helping me hold the cup. I looked up at him. His gaze was deep, full of unspoken desires. He led me back to the living room. We sat on the rug, him across from me. On the coffee table stood a tray with tea and a small vase of wildflowers he'd brought from the cabin. I looked at his hands. They were strong, veins visible, covered in small work scars. Those hands looked so skilled, so knowing. He set his cup down, then slowly reached toward my legs. He ran a finger along the edge of my shoe, then my ankle, and moved higher. I got hot. He gently lifted my leg as if studying it. He slipped off one shoe, then the other. His touches were light but made my heart race. He began slowly massaging my feet, every toe, every curve of the arch. It was so unusual, so intimate. I had never felt anything like it before. I closed my eyes, sinking into this new sensation. It wasn't just physical pleasure, it was something much bigger, a feeling of complete surrender, trust. He was my teacher, and I was his student, ready for any lesson he gave. Outside, the rain grew stronger, drumming on the windows as if trying to peek inside. But we were in our own world. He kept massaging my feet, and I felt all tension leave my body, my thoughts scattered. Only this sensation remained. His touches were confident, knowing, and I completely gave myself to them. I felt him leading me into this world where the line between teacher and student blurred, leaving only forbidden pleasure. Outside the window, it had grown dark, and only the rare glow of streetlights lit our yard in the small town outside Denver. At that time, we were already living in Colorado, because Victor had found a much more profitable job here connected with logistics and freight hauling. The move was sudden, but I quickly got used to the new place. Our new apartment was roomier than the old one, with panoramic windows looking out over the high plains. Mom had gotten a job at the local community center, where she organized festivals and holiday events. And we kept on with our underground lessons. Those lessons had become my addiction, my oxygen. I needed him more than ever. Victor was no longer just my stepdad. He had become my guide into a world of unknown sensations. He was the one who opened my eyes to my own desires, to the part of me I didn't even know existed. One night, when everything seemed sunk in absolute silence, we met in the kitchen. Darkness wrapped everything, and only the timid moonlight slipping through the panoramic window lit us up. That evening, I was wearing a light cotton nightie that my grandma had given me for Christmas. It was soft baby blue, a little loose but short enough to leave my legs bare. My hair was down, and I felt the ends tickling my shoulders. The kitchen smelled of fresh bread Mom had baked earlier, and the faint trace of his cologne that always seemed to hang in the air whenever he was near. There was no noise, no sign. Just us in a world cut off from everything else, hidden in the half-dark of night. I was sure no one would ever find us. Mom was sleeping soundly. That wasn't a problem. Time itself seemed to stop around us, and for one short moment I felt we were the masters of this silent universe. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from the tension of the forbidden, from something that shouldn't be happening. But in that moment, I couldn't stop it. I was caught in the trap of desire, in something my mind fought to understand, but my body craved with brutal force. He started showing me things he had never shown before. We moved in the same rhythm under the moonlight, from touch to touch, quite slowly but with rhythm. He covered my mouth. That was part of that night's lesson, a perfectly rehearsed choreography. He was teaching me control over sound, so not a single whisper escaped. He pressed a finger to my lips, then carefully but firmly covered my mouth with his palm. His hand was warm, slightly rough, and I could feel his pulse beating. It was strange, a little frightening, but at the same time unbelievably arousing. I felt completely under his power. I couldn't speak, but I could feel. And I felt everything. He led me, his touches confident, his movements precise. My body moved in sync with his, as if we were one. I could see his eyes gleaming in the moonlight, full of something I couldn't read, but that made my heart stop. In those moments, the world around us ceased to exist. There was only us, our bodies, our breathing. He was my mentor, and I gave myself to him completely, without holding anything back. We danced in that lunar silence. Our silhouettes merged into one, as if we had been cut from a single piece of night. His hand still covered my mouth, and that silence was so loud, so full. I felt every muscle of his, every movement of his body. It was the most intimate closeness I had ever experienced, and it was so powerful, I thought I would explode. And then suddenly, there was a sound I never imagined I would hear. The door flew open. In a single heartbeat, everything we had built in that short moment of darkness collapsed, and there, in the doorway, she appeared. It was my mom. In her eyes shone an indescribable mix of disbelief, pain, and rage. Her face went pale, her breathing ragged. The silence among the three of us was absolute, as if the very air had frozen. She didn't need to say a word. Her eyes said everything. She had discovered the truth we had tried so hard to hide, the truth that, no matter how much we wished otherwise, we could no longer deny. Now our family stood on the edge of an abyss. The structure we thought unbreakable had collapsed forever. Mom stopped talking to me. Her presence became distant, cold, as if I had become a stranger to her, someone she could no longer bear to look at. I remember that day in every detail, even months later. The morning after we were caught was the heaviest of my life. The air in the apartment felt thick and suffocating. Mom was in the kitchen with her back to me, shoulders rigid. I tried to walk up to her to say something, anything, but the words stuck in my throat. Her silence was louder than any scream. I watched her wash dishes, her hands moving mechanically like she was a robot. That day she was wearing her old faded housecoat she'd had for years. It used to be bright with southwestern patterns, but now it looked dull and lifeless, just like her. Victor disappeared. He left that same morning without a word. I didn't know where he went, and Mom didn't seem to know either. His things were gone too. The few suitcases he had brought, his favorite books, his tools, everything that reminded us of his presence had vanished, leaving only emptiness and pain behind. The house that used to be full of his scent, his presence, now felt foreign and cold. Guilt was eating me up from the inside, and I didn't know how to look Mom in the eye. The weight of her pain was unbearable, but so was the distance between us. With every day my world got smaller, darker, and every second I tried to find a way to fix everything, I realized there was no easy solution. The pieces were shattered, and I didn't know if we could ever put them back together again. I often sat in my room, listening to every rustle, hoping to hear his voice, his footsteps, but there was only silence. Silence that pressed on my ears, that filled every corner of the apartment. I remembered his touches, his words, his lessons. Every memory was like a sharp shard of glass stabbing straight into my heart. I felt like I'd been torn apart. Every evening I watched Mom sit on the couch in the living room, staring at one spot, her eyes empty. She stopped putting on makeup, her hair was always a mess, and she barely ate. I tried cooking for her, bringing food to her room, but she just turned away. I saw how she suffered, and that made my own pain even sharper. I couldn't find the strength to ask for forgiveness because it felt like there were no words that could fix this. I went to school, but my thoughts were miles away. Classes flew past, teachers' words never reached me. I felt cut off from everyone, like I was locked inside a glass ball. Alex from the parallel class tried to talk to me, but I just brushed him off. My old fantasies about him now seemed so distant, so childish. Have you ever felt like your own desires dragged you into a place with no way out? I never thought something so deep, something that felt so real in my head, could lead me into such a destructive situation. Now I'm trapped in a spiral of guilt and anxiety, not knowing if I'll ever find a way out. Is it even possible to get past something like this? Will I ever be able to regain the trust I lost? Or, like I'm terrified of, are we doomed to live forever under the shadow of something irreversible? Sometimes it feels like I'm being suffocated by the constant pressure to be someone I'm not, to be pulled into something I never should have allowed. Now I'm sitting here in the silence, writing these lines, and outside the window it's already getting dark. Mom seems to have gone to bed. I can hear her quiet, uneven breathing from the next room. I don't know what to do. I read your comments, your advice, but nothing feels right. Please tell me how to get out of this. Is it possible to go back? Or are we just doomed to carry the weight of our own mistakes forever? I don't know. But one thing I do know for sure, my world has changed forever, and I still feel his touch, still hear his voice. And that makes me wonder, did he really leave for good? Or is this just the calm before another storm,